The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
And if you look, the CIA is a sock puppet for the military-industrial complex. Its function is to provide a steady pipeline of forever wars for Raytheon and General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman and Boeing and Lockheed. That's who it's working for. It's not working for the American public.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. continuing to drop some dimes. What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Hey, sorry I've missed you a couple days here. Honestly, I'm working on trying to get interviews and things lined up and really take this podcast to the next level. But anyway, I did want to start off with that. You know, RFK Jr., again, I don't like everything that he's done. In particular, I really don't like how he basically pretty much bitched out of answering anything in regards to Gaza on the Dave Smith podcast. I think he did himself a lot of harm with that. But aside from that, I mean, the guy keeps on going around and, you know, talking about things that other Republican and Democrat candidates, like what he just said. I think this was, I forget what city this was in, but it was either yesterday or the day before, in terms of this military-industrial complex and, you know, all the things we've talked about. I really do commend him for bringing light to that narrative, but it's not really even a narrative because it is absolutely true. It really is. That stuff matters. I mean, from Dwight D. Eisenhower's speech back in 59 or 60 to everything that, you know, his uncle John F. Kennedy talked about over the years, to Richard Nixon, who said a lot of great stuff. Man, I got a deep, shallow dive into Richard Nixon. I think there's something with that. He's not bad like they made him out to be. He's just not. I actually think there's well, you know what? I'm gonna visit that at some point here. But listen to another part of RFK Jr.'s speech.
My uncle understood that in 1961 when he came into power. 4 months in, during the Bay of Pigs, when he realized he'd been lied to by his agency and by the military brass. He said publicly he took blame for it, but privately he said to his aides, I want to take the CIA and shatter it into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds.
I think I've played part of that clip before, but, you know, that was the beginning of the end for JFK. It really was. And so I'm glad this is now coming up again because I think it's important to get a handle on this. All right, listen to some more.
But also, the Fed is a captive agency by the banking industry. Jamie Dimon and Larry Fink run the Fed.
All right, again, I mean, it's impressive he's calling these guys out by name. Jamie Dimon is a CEO of JP Morgan. Larry Fink is a CEO of BlackRock. You know, these guys are ridiculously powerful. The amount of wealth is in the trillions, the multiple trillions in terms of what their firms manage. And so if you think about, you know, the trickle down of that, if JP Morgan Chase and BlackRock are responsible for trillions and trillions of your money, by the way. You know, you've also got Vanguard, you've also got State Street. You know, all these big investment firms basically have all the mutual funds and the pensions and all of your money tied up. They have power. They have power in terms of who they're investing in, who they're not investing in, manipulating the market. You know, man, honestly, some of that stuff is above my pay grade, but I can absolutely guarantee that the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ is not just running on supply and demand. There are nefarious forces at play in the market for sure.
It's not working for you and me. It's working to flood the canyons of Wall Street with money. That's much more concerning to me than the agencies. The agencies have too much power because they're owned by the industry. The agency didn't have too much power when it was working for the American public.
Seriously, whether you like this guy or you do not like this guy, this is a really good speech. And, again, the reason I've always, and I know I've talked a lot about RFK Jr. and Vivek and all that stuff, but the reason I talk about these guys and the reason, honestly, why I listen to them, whether I like them or don't like them is kind of besides the point. But the reason I listen to them is because they're offering a fresh perspective. They're offering fresh takes in a ridiculously stale political environment. You didn't hear any of this type stuff from Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Mike Pence. You don't even hear this stuff from Trump or Biden. You know what I'm saying? So seriously, I don't know. I'm not, honestly, I'm not trying to convince you to vote for RFK Jr. because I don't think I will vote for RFK Jr. But my point is, it doesn't matter who you decide to vote for. You should listen to everybody because you can learn something from what really everybody has to say. Last episode, we talked a lot about, pretty much mostly about, the Trump bloodbath thing. And again, I don't care if you hate Trump or you love Trump. That was a media manipulated situation that took what he said and put it into a narrative of a concept. And, that has done irreparable harm. Literally yesterday, I talked to a couple of friends and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe Trump said that about the country's going to be a bloodbath if he doesn't win. And then I was like, hey, did you listen to my podcast episode? Obviously that answer was no. And they're like, oh no, I haven't got a chance to listen to it yet. I said, okay, well, to save you the trouble, if you want, that statement that he made was taken out of context, and here's the correct context. And then I sent one of my friends the full video, and he's like, oh wow, okay, yeah, I do look at that entire clip and I interpret it as him talking about the auto industry. So anyway, man, there's just a lot of crap going on right now. And, again, I just really more and more am just netting out on just thinking for myself. It's like I've got a brain. We all have brains. We don't have to be a geopolitical analyst or pundit to understand what's going on. We really don't. All you have to do is honestly take in all the information and just decide for yourself what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. But we've gotten so polarizing that in many ways, a lot of people are losing their ability to critically think. And I think that started with the narrative around COVID and the vaccines. I really do.
But they don't do that. The health agencies are not working for public health. They're working to keep us sick because the group that controls them, the pharmaceutical industry, profits from chronic disease.
This is funny. This was like a 52-second clip from RFK Jr. that I thought I was going to play, but now I keep interrupting it and adding points. All right, so now I want to shift gears to what he talked about there. The pharmaceutical industry benefits from chronic disease. Seriously, that's another great point. It does. Good health makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't make a lot of dollars. I think I've said that before. I kind of reapplied that from somebody. It doesn't. The pharmaceutical companies, they want to keep you sick. You look at all the statin drugs. Actually, I'll use myself as a perfect example. Yeah, my cholesterol was high. I was at 263 on my last visit. And then I talked to my doctor and I said, listen, I'm not going on a statin right now. I actually think, and I've done this before, I've let my diet slip a little bit. And so I'm gonna get back to where I know I need to be as far as health and diet and all of that. And, maybe get back down to that fighting weight of 144, something like that. And then I want to see what my levels are. And then I want to see what the labs are. And then, what's funny? I just thought of this actually. I don't know where the markers for that 200 number when it comes to cholesterol, that's the number that has always been, I guess, said as, okay, anything above 200 is borderline, above 240 is borderline, and then I think above 260 is considered high. I need to go back and research how and where and who created those guidelines, because I think I said this in the first or many episodes ago. What if that baseline number was 240 or 260? Why is it 200? So I'm going to try and figure that out.
Now, $4.3 trillion a year we're spending on chronic disease, and nobody's even doing research on it at NIH. So that's a big problem. The pharmaceutical industry, the oil industry, the coal industry, the chemical industry, which I've seen firsthand throughout my career. Each of their agencies are captured. They become sock puppets for the industry they're supposed to regulate. All of these agencies are controlled by an industry, and I think that is the biggest threat to American democracy.
Seriously, man, I don't know. God, he really made a lot of sense in that speech. I've liked a few different speeches that he's given. And then again, I haven't liked kind of his major stance on, or lack of stance on, the Gaza situation. But that speech, he made a lot of sense. He really did. I've said this so many times. Gosh, I wish his voice was normal. I really do. I feel like with a normal voice that is not affected by whatever the virus that affected his voice, that speech could really, really be magnified and go places. I hate to say it, but it does. It loses a little bit of effectiveness because of, unfortunately, how he sounds. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but hey, that's true. I guess that is also calling a spade a spade.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in the port city of Jeddah on Wednesday. The two discussed efforts to reach a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
All right, shifting gears. Antony Blinken back in the Middle East. I hope this guy's getting frequent flyer miles for his trips. I think he's done like 15 trips in the past 5 months to the Middle East. But he went again. He met with MBS, Saudi Arabia's dude, Mohammed bin Salman, and then he also met with Egypt and Qatar and Jordan, okay? Something is happening.
On Thursday, Blinken is scheduled to meet in Cairo with the foreign ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Jordan, as well as a top official from the UAE and a Palestinian representative.
I love that. It's like he's meeting with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, Jordan, the Harlem Globetrotters, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, by the way, and a representative of the Palestinians.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Republican senators on Wednesday by video link. Senator John Barrasso says they got an update on the war, the release of hostages, and the efforts to defeat Hamas.
I've literally turned into the interrupting cow this episode. So the interrupting cow is knock, knock. Who's there? The interrupting moo. All right, so let's shift gears. Netanyahu addresses the Republicans. I need to dive into this more in another episode, but here is the fact. The entire Republican Party is pro-Israel and pro-Netanyahu. There is not one Republican, actually only Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, and Thomas Massie. I'm sorry. Those two guys are the only two guys that I've heard anything negative about, this. Actually, not even negative. Anything empathetic towards the innocent civilians of Gaza. You know what I mean? Like, come on, you can support. If you want to support Netanyahu and support Israel, that's fine. But like, acknowledge innocent civilians being dead. You don't even have that from Republicans. They actually definitely have been given a set of talking points, and they pretty much stick to those talking points.
We told him Israel has every right to defend themselves, and he said that's exactly what they continue to do.
So that was some Republican guy, but it's basically the same exact thing from all of them, from the highest level to the lowest level.
The address by Netanyahu comes nearly a week after Senate leader Chuck Schumer gave a speech branding the Israeli leader an obstacle to peace.
Chuck Schumer's attacks on Netanyahu and the government of Israel is an attack upon a democracy.
These guys on both sides have literally used the word democracy so much they've completely tarnished it. You know, everybody's tarnished it. I don't even know what that word means anymore. I don't even know what a democracy is anymore.
Netanyahu has rebuffed a plea from President Biden to call off plans for a ground assault of Rafah, a city on the southern edge of Gaza. The Israeli Prime Minister gave a televised address on Wednesday that preparations were underway for the invasion of the city.
All right, so this is where, again, things just don't make sense. I mean, think about it. Biden, who is a longtime supporter of Israel, is basically telling Netanyahu not to do that. And Netanyahu is like, no, I'm going to do that. And we're preparing for that.
I want you to know that I have already approved the IDF's operational plan. And soon we will also approve the plan to evacuate the civilian population from the battle zones.
I love the fact that Netanyahu speaks better English than I do, and they got a translator for that. That's hilarious. And then the translator sounded like Count Dracula. Anyway, all right, so stuff, man. It is definitely, said it before, I'm going to say it again. It's Game of Thrones. It is, you know, again, Netanyahu, you've got Chuck Schumer, who is obviously Jewish Democrat. You know, one of Biden's right-hand guys coming out with that kind of speech last Thursday. You've got Biden, who, you know, he's been very flip-floppy on so many things, but, you know, he's telling Netanyahu not to do this. And then Chuck Schumer is saying, we've got to remove Netanyahu. Netanyahu is like, oh, I don't care what any of you say. I'm going to invade Rafah. So here's what I think is going to happen. This is my call right here. I think that Netanyahu is going to invade Rafah. They are going to do whatever it is they're going to do. It's going to be awful. There's going to be a lot of innocent people that die. But they're going to get whatever it is that they want to get accomplished, they're going to get accomplished. And I think there's like a backroom deal that once this is all done, maybe they've built this fort. I don't know what they're going to do with these people, but I do not think that these people are going back to their homes in Gaza. I think once this is all done, maybe the deal is Netanyahu will gracefully retire. I don't think that guy's going to be embarrassed. I don't think they're going to embarrass him by removing him, but maybe all of that happens. Hostages get released. He looks like a hero because he got the hostages released. They accomplished whatever it is they're looking to accomplish by gaining that land. Netanyahu gets taken out. There's quote unquote democratic elections that happen in Israel. They bring in a new regime and so on and so forth. More to come on that, but in a nutshell, I think that's the plan, and I think it is a plan that is collective in nature.
But in order to achieve a two-state solution, the reality is that things must change. Right now, there are four major obstacles standing in the way of two states, and until they are removed from the equation, there will never be peace in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank. The four major obstacles are Hamas and the Palestinians who support and tolerate their evil ways, radical right-wing Israelis in government and society, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
All right, so those were the four things. I don't think I played that last week when we talked about Chuck Schumer's speech, but those were the four things that he said have to go. You know, this stuff, Chuck Schumer is not getting up there in front of the entire world and then literally, I mean, the hate he's received in the hardcore Israeli Jewish community is insane. I've read some of these comments. Holy mackerel. That dude definitely has Secret Service and major security around him because the hate he's received in his community, you know, it's insane. And so he did not take that upon himself to do that. So that's the plan. They're getting rid of all of them. It's like a one collective changing of the guards. Netanyahu, right-wing Israeli government, gone. Mahmoud Abbas, Palestinian Authority, gone. Hamas, gone. Now, again, who's going to take over? What's it going to look like? What's that two-state solution look like? That's why Blinkin, per those earlier clips, he's there meeting with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, Jordan, the countries that surround Israel and surround Gaza and Palestine. Again, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, Jordan, those are the countries that, the United States has great diplomatic relations with, even though they sometimes act like we don't. We do. They do. Saudi Arabia is oil rich, and the other countries, they know where their bread is buttered. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with this clip. Keep calling a spade a spade. Good stuff. I need to formulate a little bit more on exactly what I think is going to happen, but I do think there will be an eventual quote unquote removal / retirement of Netanyahu as part of this once whatever he thinks he needs to accomplish is accomplished. But I don't think he's going to get embarrassed. I don't think it's going to be nasty. I think they're going to make him look like a hero. Hostages got released. He's going to look, he's going to ride off into the sunset, basically. All right, call a spade a spade. Have a great weekend. Give a listen, and we'll catch you next week.
These are the countries that receives the most aid from the United States. First up, we have Egypt. Egypt receives about $1 billion, which is aimed at strengthening security and ensuring stability in the Middle East. Next up is Jordan. Jordan receives $1.1 billion in economic assistance and $470 million in military aid. Then we have Israel. Israel receives nearly $4 billion annually, which includes $3.3 billion for military financing and $500 million for missile defense programs. This aid is mostly allocated under the Foreign Military Financing Program, which allows Israel to purchase U.S. military equipment and services. Also, since October 7th, Biden administration requested an additional $14.3 billion for arms to Israel, in addition to the annual $3.8 billion in military aid. At last, we have Ukraine. Ukraine receives $16.6 billion as economic aid from U.S. separate from the economic aid package. The U.S. has also provided Ukraine with another $1.6 billion in security assistance.
The ending was terrific.
This episode is being brought to you by the upcoming book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You. That's right, Bro wrote a book, and it's coming soon. Stay tuned.